Alright, well, we will start with this introduction chapter. Okay, so this first slide is just talking about the difference between anatomy and physiology. So anatomy just really means learning the names of the organs and the bones, and then physiology refers to the function of those different parts. Anatomy and physiology are related to each other. So how structure is made up of is related to its function. So here are some examples. Bones are able to support and protect our soft tissues because they're composed of hard minerals. And then when we get to the tissue chapter, we're going to learn about our respiratory tract tissue and how it's able to move mucus because of its shape. Okay, so this slide here is showing the levels of organization, the smallest part to the largest. Because it's kind of hard to see here, I'm going to write these out larger for you on the next slide. Okay, so the smallest level of organization is the atom. The atoms, for example, hydrogen, oxygen, carbon, we're going to learn. So then atoms come together to make up molecules. So molecules are made up of more than one atom. So for example, H2O, water, is a molecule because it's made up of two hydrogens and an oxygen. I'm going to skip that macromolecule. Macromolecule just means a larger molecule. But so then the molecules come together to make up organelles. Organelles are like the little organs inside our cells. And the organelles come together to make up cells. Then the cells that are similar in shape, similar in function, if they are together, then we call it a tissue. So for example, muscular tissue, skeletal tissue. Okay, then the tissues come together to make up organs. And let me just write this here, and I want you to know this. Organs are made up of more than one tissue type. So, for example, our heart is made up of more than one tissue type. The heart has the cardiac muscle tissue, epithelial tissue, connective tissue, nervous tissue. Okay, then the organs come together to make up the organ system. So the muscular system or the digestive system, respiratory system. And then when all the organ systems are combined, then you have one organism. Okay, so what I want you to know is to be able to put these in order. So if I give these two jumbled, can you put them from smallest to largest? So it'll be like a multiple choice question where you would have to select the correct order of these. Alright, so then our book talks about the necessary life functions for our body to survive. And all our organ systems must cooperate with each other. So here, pretty common sense stuff. Maintaining boundaries between internal and external environments, so think of that as the skin, or a coat for animals. Then movement is a characteristic of living things, so our muscles are responsible for that. Responsiveness means the ability to sense and respond to stimuli. So think of this as if you touch something hot and you move your hand away. So you're responding to something that happened outside of you. So that's what is stimulus. Stimuli is the plural of stimulus. And then digestion, we need to be able to break down the food that we eat. Okay, then it's continued on the next slide. So know this, I'm going to put a star by this one. Metabolism is the chemical reactions that occur in all of our body cells. So here, metabolism is when molecules are built or when molecules are broken apart. Okay, so we're going to learn catabolism means that molecules are breaking apart, breaking down molecules, and anabolism means building larger molecules. Alright, but yeah, on the next chapter, we're going to talk more about this. Excretion is the removal of waste from our body. So our urinary system does this, our digestive system does this, respiratory system when we get rid of the CO2. Reproduction is not really a necessary life function, but it is necessary for the um, the genes to be passed on to the next generation. And then growth. We need our nervous system to grow, muscles to grow, bones to grow, so that we can uh, find food for ourselves, get away from danger. Okay, then next, the survival needs. Nutrients, of course, we need them. Nutrients are needed for energy and cell building. Oxygen. Oxygen is needed for getting the energy out of the nutrients that we eat. So we're going to learn ATP is this energy molecule. And so when we break down the food that we eat, we make ATP, and then our cells use that ATP for energy. Water. Water is important for those chemical reactions, but also for our blood. Body temperature. If the body temperature is too high or too low, that's going to affect our nervous system. And then the atmospheric pressure. Just know that this one is for breathing. If the pressure is too low, meaning if the amount of gas is too low, then oxygen intake decreases. So that's what happens at high altitudes. Pressure is lower, meaning the amount of gas is lower, and so then the oxygen intake is less as well. Okay, next, homeostasis. Homeostasis, putting a star here, know the definition. Maintenance of a stable internal environment. But what it really means is, if something goes wrong in the body, if something is off, then the body is trying to fix itself. Okay, so it's a self-regulating system. And this is done by different cells and different organs that work with each other to make sure that our body is working correctly. 3 parts of a homeostatic mechanism. Receptor. Receptor just means what is the organ or what is the cell that detects the problem. It detects the problem and provides information about the problem. Then the control center is the decision maker. So this is the one that says, okay, there is a problem. We just learned about this. How can we fix it? And then the effector. Effector is what the control center sends a command to. So then the effector can be a muscle or a gland or organ that responds to the control center. Okay, so this may not make some sense right now, but on the next slide, let's look at an example. This is just talking about the 3 different parts. So receptor, again, receptor, know that this one is the one that detects. Control center is the decision maker, and the effectors are the ones that are actually going to be doing the work. So know the definition of these. So if I say, which of the following is the one that detects a stimulus, that detects a problem, then you would pick receptor. If I said, which of the following is the one that makes a decision and then sends a command to the effectors, it would be the control center. Or if I said, which is the one that is actually doing the response, taking the command from the control center, then you would say the effectors. Okay, so don't know the definitions for these 3. Okay, so here in this example, you do not need to memorize this, but this is just to show receptors, control center, effectors, but in this one example. So here, this is just showing the temperature regulation. They put 2 parts here. The top part is showing what happens if the body temperature gets too high, and the bottom one is showing what happens when the body temperature gets too low. So here, stimulus. Stimulus here refers to the change, the problem. So here the body temperature rises. Receptors are the ones that pick up the information. So here, in this example, it's these cells in the skin and the brain. Then the receptors send the information to the control center. In this example, it's the brain. So the brain is deciding what to do. Okay, now that it knows of the problem. Then the control center sends the information or command to the effectors. So the effectors are the ones that are actually doing the work. So now the effectors, in this case the sweat glands, are activated by the control center. So then when we sweat, the body temperature falls. Okay, then the bottom part is just showing when we get cold. So here the receptors are the same, control center is the same in this example, but now you can see how the effectors are different. So here when we get cold, we shiver because our muscles are activated, and then that helps to increase the temperature in our body. Okay. So with homeostasis, there are actually the 2 types. what we just looked at was negative feedback of homeostasis. It's the most common type. So know that negative feedback is when it gets back to normal. So whatever the problem was, the body is trying to fix itself. And so negative, think negates. The body's trying to negate the bad effect. Okay, so negative feedback controls the body temperature that we just looked at was an example. Regulation of blood pressure, the regulation of the sugar level in the blood are all different examples. Positive feedback, on the other hand, it's very uncommon in the body. Here, instead of getting it back to normal, you increase it even more, intensified instead of reversed. And so it's the activity is actually increasing instead of decreasing. Now for this, here are the two examples that I want you to know for positive feedback: blood clotting and the uterine contractions of childbirth. So what's happening with blood clotting is when you get a cut and you're bleeding, platelets are these little tiny particles in your blood. They go to the area where there's the injury. They go to the area and then they release these chemicals to call over more platelets. So then more platelets come. And then they release their own factors to call over more platelets. So because here platelets are increasing more and more, this is considered positive feedback. So again, intensified or increased. And then during childbirth, contractions increase more and more and more because the hormones are increasing. And so because again, it's increasing, it's considered positive feedback.